I'm going to come back to something that Robert said in his points, which is about the scopes of work. And certainly, what in the work I've done, including when I was working for you, Robert, I couldn't find many things that we couldn't help with. There weren't many processes where you couldn't see how GBS could make a difference. But you do have to be selective, and you do have to choose what you do. Um, and and I'm just wondering what impact the scope of work, what impact on the scope of work is there for the different industries that you work in? So, Sumit, you work in retail currently, previously, with British Telecom. Robert, you've worked in pharma and life sciences businesses before. Sumit, what impact does the industry that you're working in have on the scope of work?
Yeah, it's a really relevant question actually. And me having worked in sort of different sectors and now through my B2B business, the visibility I have. If you think about sort of each industry emphasizes on different things. So, I'm not generalizing, but let me give you some example. If you think about banking, risk, compliance, and anti-fraud, data quality, it's right at the forefront. If you think of pharma, regulatory rigor, R&D support becomes really, really key. And in retail, it's a 4% margin business for us. So therefore, there is a fire all the time. So, how do you become agile? How do you think about data science? How do you understand your consumers? And how do you create a personalized offering for your consumers? How do you promote? And is it the right promotion? Are you making money on those promotions? So, these are sort of different things. But I love retail because I feel there's always a burning platform because there's so much headwinds in retail and especially what goes on in from a supply chain and everything. And there is almost a pull from a market into GBS perspective to say, how do we have this organization that is agile, quick to market and help us to create that differentiator in the market. So I get excited about working with retail. A lot of people say to me that, where do you get your capex from? How do you do this? You're a 4% margin business. And for me, it's about business case. It's about delivering the returns on the capex. We don't have infinite capex. So the capex that you have, how do you deliver return and quick returns? And that keeps us agile and on our toes. It's different to telecom. Telecom, we had higher margin business. So therefore, it took a lot more convincing as to say, to go to the business to say, we can add this value and we can do this. And and to me in retail, the core and non-core, the conversation which I has to have in BT is blur. I do things in my GBS, which is absolute core to Tesco. Like, for example, architectural design. There's no architects in Tesco, all sits with me.
Wow.
The AI and data science sits with me. So therefore, you know, there is a burning platform and it helps. And but the flip side of that is if you are not quick and fast and agile, you're too slow and you are too capex hungry, you won't have a seat on the table.
Mm.
So therefore, it helps you to reinvent yourself every year to think differently as to how you create value.
I think it's a great example, Sumit, of how you need to be business relevant in your GPS, right? And how different industries require different things. Now, if I think back of when I built my first shared service center, when I was actually working in FMCG, an FMCG company, selling into retail actually, and in that company, profit was low, but more importantly, cash was scarce. It was all about cash. Cash was the thing. I mean, we spend more time on cash forecasting, cash flow management than on P&L, gross margin, sales management. It was cash because without cash, you're bankrupt, right? That's how it goes in companies. Cash is king. And so my first shared service center I actually built was a credit management shared service center to make sure that our friends in the retail actually paid us on time. And it was tough. It was tough. And when I contrast that when I moved into life sciences and pharmaceuticals, credit management was not an issue.
Mm.
It's not an issue because in those industries, your customers, they pay because they need your product. The hospitals need your medicines, the patients need your medicines, so they pay. So credit is really not an issue. And it just, there is such a stark difference from many industries where actually credit is important, cash is important, within life sciences and pharmaceuticals. Of course, it's important, but it's much less important than making sure that your R&D pipeline is right out there. I mean, the R&D pipeline is the key thing in life science and pharmaceuticals. So as a GBS, you're spending more time on what can I do to support the R&D pipeline and how can I
Mm.
support the medical team and the development team in being successful in the work that they do. So different businesses require different emphases. But I thought it's interesting to see the difference between the cash focus from one industry to the next.
Mm.
It's quite stark.